The night was colder than usual. The streets, dimly lit by flickering streetlights, were nearly empty except for a few stragglers rushing home. Among them was Alexander Graves, a man who had everything: money, power, and a name that made people stand still. Yet none of that mattered right now. His suit, once pristine, was now torn and smeared with dirt. His expensive watch had been stolen and his phone was gone. He staggered through a dark alley, clutching his ribs, pain shooting through his body, with every step. This was not how the night was supposed to end. Just hours ago, he had been at an exclusive business gala celebrating another billion-dollar deal. But a wrong turn, a reckless decision to take a shortcut, had led him into a trap. A group of masked men had jumped him, taken everything, and left him lying in the filth like he was nothing. No bodyguards, no drivers, just him and the cruel silence of the streets. He tried calling out for help, but who would stop for a man in a torn suit? People walked past, either not noticing him or pretending not to. His head spun, his body aching, and for the first time in his life, fear gripped him. He was helpless. That's when he saw her. A woman, wrapped in a tattered shawl, sitting near a pile of old newspapers. Her hair was tangled, her clothes worn, but her eyes, those eyes held something different, something strong. She looked at him, hesitated for only a second, and then stood up. Without a word, she reached into a small plastic bag, pulled out a bottle of water, and handed it to him. Alexander's pride screamed at him not to accept help, especially from a beggar, but desperation won. He took the bottle, his hands shaking. She didn't speak, didn't ask questions, just helped him sit down and checked his wounds with surprising care. "You need to get out of here," she finally said, her voice quiet but firm. "It's not safe." He wanted to ask her why she was helping him, but exhaustion took over. She stayed by his side, shielding him from the cold, until he managed to regain some strength. Then, just as quietly as she had appeared, she disappeared into the night. Days later, Alexander couldn't get her out of his mind. He was back in his towering office, dressed in his finest suit, but something had shifted. He had people who worked for him, people who would do anything at his command, yet none of them had been there when he needed help the most. But she had. So he did something unusual. He sent people to find her, and when they finally did, he made her an offer. A job. She hesitated, staring at him across his grand office desk. "Why?" she asked. "Because I don't believe in debts," he said simply. But what Alexander didn't know was that hiring her would change everything. She wasn't just a beggar. She had secrets, and soon his company, his entire empire, would feel the impact of who she really was. The silence in Alexander's office stretched as she studied him, her dark eyes searching for something. He had faced boardrooms full of cutthroat executives, negotiated deals worth billions, yet somehow this woman's gaze made him feel unsettled. "You still haven't answered my question," she said. "Why me?" Alexander leaned back in his chair, watching her carefully. She looked different from the night they met. Cleaner, but still wearing the same guarded expression. He wasn't sure what made him do this. Maybe curiosity. Maybe something deeper. But he needed to know who she was. "You helped me," he said simply. "I don't forget things like that." Her lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't believe him. Still, she accepted the job. Her name was Elena. That was all she gave him at first. No last name, no past, just a quiet presence that made the people in his office stare. She was a mystery, and Alexander had never liked mysteries he couldn't solve. At first, the work was simple. An assistant role, nothing too demanding. But Elena was different from the polished professionals who filled his company. She moved like she was used to being invisible, yet she noticed everything. Within days, she learned the ins and outs of the office, how people worked, who held power. She asked few questions but always seemed to have answers. And what unsettled Alexander the most was that she wasn't intimidated by him. Then things started happening. Small things at first, a report going missing, a meeting rescheduled without his approval, an investor pulling out of a deal at the last minute. Coincidences, his team called them. But Alexander didn't believe in coincidences. One evening, long after most employees had left, he found Elena in his office, staring out the massive floor-to-ceiling windows. She didn't turn when he entered. "You're hiding something," he said. She exhaled, her breath fogging the glass. "And what makes you so sure?" "Because I do it all the time," he admitted. She finally faced him, her expression unreadable. "You think I'm here for a reason? Aren't you?" She didn't answer, but for the first time, something flickered in her eyes, something dangerous. That was when the first real threat arrived, a late-night email. No sender, no name, just a warning. Stay away from her. Alexander read it twice, his grip tightening on the phone. Someone knew Elena. Someone didn't want her here. The next day, he tested her. He called her into his office, watching closely as he slid the phone across the desk. "Any idea who might have sent this?" Elena barely glanced at it. "No. Liar." But she didn't flinch, didn't break eye contact. She was good at this. Too good. "Tell me the truth, Elena," he said. She hesitated, just for a second. Then, for the first time, she smiled. But it wasn't a warm smile. It was a warning. "You might not like the truth, Alexander." The game had begun, and Alexander wasn't sure if he was the hunter or the prey. Alexander didn't sleep that night. He kept replaying Elena's words in his head, trying to make sense of the warning behind her smile. Something wasn't right, and he knew it. He had built his empire on instincts, and right now, every instinct was screaming that Elena was more than she appeared to be. The next morning, his security team confirmed what he already suspected. Elena had no real records. No past employment history, no social security details that checked out. It was like, she didn't exist before a few years ago. That was impossible. When he confronted her again, she didn't seem surprised. She simply sat across from him, calm as ever, as if she had been waiting for this moment. "Who are you?" he demanded. Elena sighed, leaning back in her chair. "I was hoping you'd figure it out sooner," she said, "but I guess you needed a little push." Alexander's grip tightened on the edge of his desk. "Tell me the truth. Now." She studied him for a long moment before finally speaking. "Your company, your wealth, your entire success. It's built on something you don't even know about. Or maybe you do, but you've buried it so deep that you pretend it doesn't exist." His pulse quickened. "What are you talking about?" Elena leaned forward, her eyes dark with something unreadable. "Years ago, your company acquired a smaller firm. A deal so minor, you probably never thought about it again. But that deal destroyed families. It left people with nothing. My family was one of them." Alexander's mind raced. He had made countless acquisitions over the years, some hostile, some clean, but he couldn't recall one that matched what she was saying. "You think I ruined your life?" he asked. Elena's expression didn't change. "Not just mine. My father was one of the original founders of that company. He was loyal, believed in what he built. When your firm took over, he lost everything. He tried to fight back. And then, he disappeared." Alexander's breath caught. "Disappeared?" "No trace, no explanation, just gone." She exhaled, steadying herself. "I was 15. That's when my life changed. My mother and I lost our home. She didn't survive long after that." A heavy silence filled the room. Alexander had heard stories like this before, but they had always been distant. Numbers on a report, lawsuits that never reached his desk. He had never seen the consequences up close. "You think I had something to do with that?" he asked. Elena shook her head. "No, but your company did. And you're responsible for what it became. For the first time in his life, Alexander felt truly powerless. He had always believed his success was earned, built with skill and intelligence. But what if it had been built on the ruins of people like Elena's family? "What do you want?" he finally asked. Her answer was simple. The truth. Alexander could have fought it. He could have buried the past like so many before him. But something about Elena's words, her unwavering determination, made him pause. So he did something unexpected. He ordered an internal investigation into the deal. It wasn't easy, his board resisted, his lawyers warned him, but he pushed forward. And what he found shocked him. Corruption, backdoor deals, people silenced, including Elena's father. Days later, he met her again, this time not as her employer, but as a man trying to make things right. "You were right," he admitted. "And I don't know if I can fix it, but I can try." Elena studied him, her face unreadable. Then, for the first time, she let her guard down. "Then we start here," she said. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was something. A new beginning. And for Alexander, it was the first step toward being the kind of man he thought he was.